this new report came out from the feds on homelessness across the country. And look, I don't need a report from the federal government to tell me that homelessness is bad here, or really across the United States. I see that with my eyeballs. Now, it helps to have some numbers and facts and figures. It also helps to see where Washington stands comparatively with other states across the country. And it'll probably come as no surprise to you that Washington has one of the worst homeless crises in the entire nation. This segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. All right, so this is a report to Congress from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's their 2024 annual report. And similar to how we kind of count homeless individuals here, it's like a point in time. I think it's accurate enough. I mean, I don't know that you're ever going to be able to get a fully accurate picture of how many people are living on the streets. You know, they'll venture under bridges and in parks or whatever, wherever homeless people may be, and try to literally count heads and count tents and stuff. But so based on a point in time count across the country, here are the key findings nationally. So it says the number of people experiencing homelessness on a single night in 2024 was the highest ever recorded. About 770,000 people across the U.S., or 23 in every 10,000 people, are experiencing homelessness or in some sort of emergency shelter, safe haven, transitional housing program, etc. So nearly 1 million of our fellow Americans are experiencing homelessness. And of course, those numbers are bolstered in large part by progressive states, by blue states, by states like ours, where homelessness just gets worse and worse and worse the more money we spend on it. I swear, we should try spending nothing on it. I think it might get better. I think if we let's do the opposite. We keep spending a lot and it gets worse, so let's try spending nothing on it. And I bet it'll get better. So state level estimates of people experiencing homelessness in Washington, 31,554. In terms of a percentage of our population per 10,000 people, we are the third highest in the country. Third highest in the country. Again, not a surprise. And I think, New York, Oregon, they're not doing very well. And that's not a surprise either. Again, you're looking at areas, whether it's, look at all the deepest sort of blue on this chart or like deep purple, represented by very, very liberal places that have a lot of the same hands-off policies, hands-off when it comes to substance abuse, hands-off when it comes to camping, hands-off when it comes to crime. It is not a wonder that those are the states that have the highest per capita homeless populations. Washington state also is one of the leading states when it comes to the change from 2023 to 2024. We've had an increase in 3,518 homeless individuals from 2023 to 2024. And as a percentage increase, again, we're one of the leading states for that as well. Not a surprise. And not a surprise that, it's been years since King County and the state declared a state of emergency when it comes to homelessness. So, and we've spent billions and billions of dollars ever since, only to have a massive increase year over year. 3,500 more people are homeless on the streets of Washington state than they were in 2023. Washington also leads the country when it comes to the number of people who are actually unsheltered. Like in New York, for as bad as New York State is, they have a right to shelter law where the number of people who are actually sleeping on the streets, in the parks, and not in some sort of even overnight emergency shelter is actually very, very low in New York. Not in Washington state. Not in California, where you can sleep wherever you want. We're going to continue to take billions of dollars from taxpayers saying it's for housing and shelter, and then we still have nobody in housing and shelter. It's very strange how that happens. Now, I know why things are so bad. Do you know why things are so bad? Of course you do, because you watch this show. Drugs, mental health, and a lack of accountability. Drugs, mental health, lack of accountability, sometimes all three at once. That's it. That's why things are so bad. Now, if you ask the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development why things are so bad in Washington state, what do they say? It says, large increases in the number of people experiencing chronic patterns of homelessness is attributed to the increase in a lack of affordable housing. So you've got HUD just parroting the line that we get from elected leaders in our state who have failed on this issue for more than a decade. That's the failed line from the failed King County executive, Dow Constantine, That's the failed line from the failed outgoing governor, Jay Inslee. Homelessness is fundamentally a lack of affordable housing, as if you could take these people and put them in a house and their problems would cease to exist. It is the reason, the housing first excuse, the housing first model is the reason why Washington, Oregon, California have the highest rates of homelessness in the country. And you can add New York onto that as well. At least they do homeless people the service of giving them a shelter over their head at night. Now, okay, like, look, if they want to talk about affordable housing, that's totally fine. But at least, in this lengthy report, how many pages was it? 117-page report. They talk about affordable housing, but at least they're also talking about the other issues, right? Like substance abuse. I mean, they have a robust section, right, on substance abuse. Let's see here. Nicole searched the whole document to look at it. Let's see here. Oh, no. Only one mention of drugs in 117 pages when we know drugs is the fundamental causation. And it wasn't even to talk about how drug abuse lands people on the streets and keeps them there. It was in a glossary of terms that they were defining. And the term they were defining is disability. And they defined disability as an individual with one or more of the following conditions: of physical, mental, or emotional impairment, including an impairment caused by alcohol or drug abuse. So the only place they talk about drug abuse in a 117-page report that is about an issue that we know the primary cause is drugs, they only refer to it once, and that's to say that drug abuse is a disability, and that individuals experiencing chronic homelessness refer to an individual with a disability who has been continuously experiencing homelessness for 1 year or more. So they chalk it up to people who are chronically homeless have disabilities. We're not going to talk about what those are. It includes somebody who might have a drug abuse issue, but we're not going to get into any data, statistics on how many of them specifically have a substance abuse issue that is keeping them in chronic homelessness, that is keeping them on the streets, that is keeping them under our bridges, on our sidewalks, in our parks. No, we're just going to go to the old line of, it's a lack of affordable housing. They have a disability, but it's a lack of affordable housing. Now, contrast that with, because it's 117 pages, if they're not talking about substance abuse and mental illness, what are they talking about? What are they talking about? They have entire sections of this HUD report dedicated to breaking down the gender identity of people experiencing homelessness. Entire sections. This is just one page. The gender, Exhibit 1, gender of people experiencing homelessness: woman, man, transgender, gender questioning, culturally specific identity, different identity, non-binary, more than one gender. Exhibit 1-6, same thing. Shelter status within gender identity. So not only the number of people living on the streets and who is gender non-binary or gender questioning, but also in the shelters. What women, men, transgender, gender questioning, what percentage of the shelter population do they make up? So I don't care if you track that. If you can find some sort of link where, hey, more people who identify as transgender are on the streets, well, maybe we can find a way to figure out why that is, to target those populations, to keep them off the street, to keep them sliding into our social services. The problem I have is that you're dedicating entire pages of this federal report to Congress on the gender identity of the homeless, and you have one mention in 117 pages of drugs. One mention of drugs in 117 pages HUD report. What do we say all the time? Say it with me. You cannot solve a problem that you refuse to properly identify. We will never solve the problem in Washington State, in Oregon, in California, in New York, anywhere in the country, if we refuse to properly identify and acknowledge what the problem is. the problem is drugs and mental illness. And for the fraction of homeless people for which the problem is money, for which the problem is a lack of affordable housing, for the fraction, with the amount of money we spend, billions nationally per year, on the homeless crisis, we should be able to help those people overnight. If the only problem is a lack of affordable housing that is keeping a person living in filth and squalor on the streets, with the amount of taxpayer money they take from us to give to that issue, we should be able to help every single one of them overnight. Eliminate them from the equation by helping them with that money, and then we can focus on the harder cases that account for a vast majority of people living on the streets, which are the drug addicted and the mentally ill. So 117 pages to tell us that you don't know what the problem is, or you know what the problem is, but your plan is to continue to hide it from taxpayers. Shameful. That segment is brought to you by our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. It's a new year. Make sure you sign up for their newsletter. I know they have a lot going on when it comes to the legislative session.